Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Mosina, and this is the Renegade Realtor, sort of a new show we're starting here. I've been a realtor for a few years now, well, over 10, so a little more than a few years. And this is Cosmo Spellings.
Hey, everybody.
He's been doing real estate a lot longer than I have. Believe it or not, he used to be 6 feet tall and had a head full of hair. So
Yeah, that was before it started raining, and it started shrinking.
So anyways, we decided that we wanted to start a show to talk about not just our local economy and real estate market, but also because we wanted to sort of, get in touch with other realtors and with buyers and sellers and just about anybody. So we're hoping that the show will be entertaining, informative, a lot of different things to come in the future. But for right now, consider this sort of a pilot show. And today what we're going to be talking about really is our specific area, which is Crestview here in the northwest panhandle of Florida, and kind of the market and what it's become over the last year or two, really specifically with the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I get a lot of questions, and I'm sure you do too, about what the current market is, why it is the way it is, and how do we navigate through this. So any specific thoughts?
Well, that's one of the things that I really love about real estate is that it's always evolving and always changing. And that's what's always drawn me to real estate. And gosh, if I'd known that it was this interesting and this fun 30 years ago, I would have started 30 years ago. But I'm with you, things have significantly changed in the market in the past, at least the past 6 months and then 6 months before that. And it all has, I think that a lot of it has to do with certainly with, the pandemic and with all the restrictions and everything else that goes with it. And it's relatively scary in a way. It's how things are increasing in value so substantially. And the other, besides the fact that it's becoming so much more expensive, we're starting to see those things from, owners and investors who just want to throw things on the market at this crazy price, thinking that, someone's going to buy it just because they're that desperate enough that are going to buy that property. And that is, makes you step back and think about what's happening, with the world, So, and how do you tell someone that, so-and-so put their house on the market and they got top dollar and went on the market, went under contract almost instantly, and I can't sell mine.
Yeah.
And that, I don't know, I'm sure you're seeing that as well, where, you do a CMA for someone and you look at the comps, because that's really, that's standard textbook how to value properties. And, they're like, well, I know that's what that guy had, but mine is so much better, and I want to list it for $25,000 more because I just know that there's nothing out there and people are super, whatever. I don't know. That's
so
scary.
they get a basic idea of the market, right? That scarcity right now. There are more buyers right now than there are sellers. So when a home goes on the market, there's, I guess sometimes you get this idea that there's an exponential increase into the value of the home each and every time. And to a degree that is true, but eventually it hits a breaking point. And so people might overvalue their home in a market where they think this is the time to get in. But going from there, I want to briefly kind of talk, at least give my opinion on how I've explained what particularly Crestview is experiencing. Now, Crestview is a town of two people. It's the locals who've lived here in the Okaloosa County area. And when I say Crestview, for those who are local here, I do include Fort Walton Beach and Niceville and stuff like that too. So the Okaloosa County area, there are the locals who have been here a long time, and then there is the military, particularly specifically Eglin Air Force Base, Hurlburt Field, and Duke, which is an Army Special Forces base. And our economy has, for the last few decades, has been based largely especially the real estate market, on a sort of revolving door of military coming in and out. Some stay, but a lot come for a couple of years, maybe a few more, and then they leave. And so this is, and the bases have grown in population over time too. So this has kind of been the market. So there's usually, when the market's good, there's been a high flow and return of people going in and out. Well, COVID-19 strikes in America about a year ago, and the military began to greatly restrict the amount of movement that a lot of their personnel have, even contractors, not even just the military itself. And so because of that, there are fewer people putting their homes on the market because, well, they're just not getting transferred out. And so when there's less supply, prices go up. Now, word is on the street that we're reaching the point where the military sometime this summer plans on opening that up again.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's full speed. I mean, you know, before it was just, like you just said, extremely restricted, just the personnel that they needed to go and that sort of thing. You know, and we have a couple of military cycles, you know, where people will come in and leave, you know, everybody's PCSing. But, you know, one of the other things that you're not really even remotely, you know, touching on too is the absentee owners. So you have the military who, you know, the PCS, because, you know, here's the thing. When you're dealing with purchasing a property now and even 3 or 4 years ago, is you got to have an exit strategy. Yeah. You know, so when people come in, yes, it certainly behooves them to purchase property because, you know, it's an appreciating asset and the opportunity for them to potentially make money equity wise in the property in the 3 or 4 year time frame when they're here is very good. Yeah. You know, otherwise, and because there's no housing on base, it's extremely limited. But so you have those potential people who, you know, left the area. At that time when they left the area, the market wasn't very good like it is today. Mm-hmm. So they had tenants in there. And now, you know, 20+% of the tenants are not able to move out of the property because of the COVID-19 restrictions.
That's an excellent point right there, too.
Right. Mm-hmm. So you have the absentee owner who is a lot of times is military. Mm-hmm. So they're like, man, I can get great money for my house, but I have a tenant in there. And we're starting to see listings now with tenants in place, and you got to buy it with the tenant and that sort of thing. But you got people who potentially can't sell their home. And then you have just straight up investors who, you know, want to capitalize on the market as well. Yeah. And they can't do that. So this, you know, snowball, you know, effect of the storm has created itself. And now you have, you know, 18 houses on the market in Crestview under $250,000, nothing bigger than 1,400 or 1,500 square feet, and eliminate mobile homes or homes that are just in not very good condition. And you have like 3 viable homes. And, you know, I have 3 buyers and you have 3 buyers and every other real estate agent in town has got 3 buyers, and prices go up. And that's kind of where we're sitting today.
Yeah. Currently right now working with a gentleman or a couple, and, you know, they're approved for $150,000. Guess what?
No such thing.
There's no such thing as a $150,000 home unless you can buy a dump that is that's going to need a lot of work, but depending on their loan, they probably wouldn't be and that's wouldn't back that. So.
You know, that's a great point because, you know, at some point that becomes now the new entry level, and that's actually probably not even an entry level home anymore. But you know, how long will that last? Okay, so you know, the thought process is as COVID-19 restrictions get removed and the moratoriums get lifted in June, assumably in June, and and properties become, you know, available once again, what's that 150 going to buy? Probably next to nothing. Yeah. And then of course, yay, Florida or Okaloosa County, you know, $15 an hour minimum wage, and you no longer have $150,000, you know, low entry level house. You know, now you're probably talking $200,000.
And that, and affordable housing, that's a whole other huge topic to talk about. And one day we'll get to it. So, kind of, I don't know, switching gears or not, but talking about it from my perspective, and this is, of course, my opinion, and I want to hear your opinion on it. But for me, this kind of market is definitely not a healthy one, at least in my opinion. For sellers, they may think, yeah, I can sell that house, but here's a multiple problem, this is a multiple layered problem. You can sell your house for upwards of 17-20% more than what you might have gotten pre-COVID-19, but where are you going to go?
Where are you going to go? Yep.
Right?
Where are you going to go?
So unless you have already have another property with a cabin or something on it where you can go and wait out the storm, this isn't necessarily great. And buyers, they're stuck with paying 20% over what their market value would have initially been. And in a few years from now, when they got to go back and sell that home, they may still be upside down. So my question is, do you think we're in for a little bit of a crash?
Well, I mean, I think that's inevitable because nationally we're talking about, a housing problem. When you look at new build sales are out the roof, and previously owned homes, the numbers, I don't remember what the statistics are, I'd have to look it up, but they've gone down because, just like you just said, there's no previously owned homes. So what the builders are doing, okay, let's build houses, and driving lumber prices up and everything else. I think the expectation is going to be that once the eviction moratoriums, this goes back into the REO world, but I think once the eviction moratoriums are lifted, and I don't think they're going to get lifted in June. I'd be really surprised because it's a national thing and not just a local thing, right? So, and that gets suspended or extended until September, and that's for both evictions and foreclosure moratoriums.
Yes.
Then once that happens and it finally comes to fruition in September, these properties are going to start hitting the market, but people are still going to be paying over and above. So, how much is the market going to appreciate from today until September, for example? And I guess it's kind of a good thing because the expectation is that we're going to have a market crash, or I say a market crash. We're going to start seeing a loss of value in properties. Real estate is still number one thing that you should always invest your money in because everybody has to have a place to live, and houses appreciate versus depreciate. But in a typical real estate cyclic market, you have an 8-year up and an 8-year down to each trough, right? Well, we realistically haven't seen that since the last crash. So we've had this 12, 14, almost 16-year increase in pricing, which is why it looks like we've doubled and tripled our market price, right? So
and they've been calling this, is that what they've been referring to as the boom a lot of times?
Yes. As we get close to that crest, we're in the boom. And in the boom, builders are the number one ticket on the market. Condominium sales, number one ticket on the market. And as those things start to happen, it's eventually going to start seeing a domino effect, and it starts with the commercial world, and it goes into the condominium world, which is actually the rental world when it comes to vacation rentals, and then goes into new construction because now the builders aren't building as much because they're not selling. They put on the market today, they haven't even built the house yet. They're just putting a picture of the floor plan on the market, and they're going under contract in 24 hours. So, as that starts to turn, and now the house is almost completely finished and it isn't under contract yet, and things start to slow. Again, it's a downward spiral. Lumber prices come down, everything else starts to come down. But I honestly don't think that we're going to see this huge decrease in pricing like we did in the past. I really don't. Of course, I'm not an expert, and I don't want to claim to be an expert when it comes to that type of thing.
These are our opinions.
Yeah, exactly. But I still think, let's say 15-20% drop. So if you paid $300,000 for your house and it drops, let's say on the high end 20%, that's a $60,000 loss, right? Well, we saw 50% losses, in 08, 09, right? So, but that's at the drop. So if today the house is selling for $300,000, and in June, July, August, September, it's increased another 5%. So now we're at $315 to $320, you're really looking at that drop on the $320 mark versus the $300 mark. So it still makes sense to buy a house today, because you're leveraging any potential losses, because the losses are based on what the peak is at the time, not for what you paid for it. So if you bought it last year, you're probably in a pretty good position. And as you continue to purchase this year, you're probably still in a pretty good condition, situation. And it doesn't happen overnight. assuming that the moratorium is over in September, there's still a transition period. And it may not be until January, February, March the following year, because people are going to buy those houses. Investors who are looking to make money, investors who are looking to rent properties, people who just want to buy it because, it's probably a lesser priced property and not new build, right? So you're going to see some time for that inventory to get removed. But once you start seeing that inventory removed, I think is when we're going to start seeing a small downward spike, and it's probably going to last a little while.
Yeah.
I don't think it's anything like 2008.
2008, yeah.
But 20% of housing is a lot of housing.
Yeah. Ironically, 2008 is when I got into the business of real estate, so I'm a good cynic. Well, let's talk a little bit about maybe some anecdotal experiences that we're having right now. For example, I have a listing that went on the market last weekend. It was listed for around $280, I believe.
Okay.
Put on the market, gave a sort of the current strategy right now is, all right, you have X amount of days, like 2 or 3 days to go see the house, write an offer. Anyway, so we put out on the offer, and we were getting a lot of offers, like almost 10, which is kind of overwhelming sometimes. Every offer, predictably, at least in my mind, started off as full price, but it continually escalated.
Yes.
In the end, I ended up with the seller is working right now with an offer. They're under contract for something that is $40,000 over the asking price.
What happens when it doesn't appraise?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the caveat. The person who's purchasing the house has got some serious leverage. They're paying half of the house in cash. So they only need the house to appraise
for half the price.
Right. So, and by the way, this particular home, it's great. It's a great home. Perfect for I don't know the buyers personally, but I know enough about them. It's probably perfect for them. But the other houses that were selling in that area that were getting the price that this house is going to sell for had pools and upgrades in them that this house doesn't have. So this is the kind of situation we're seeing in this market. And now it doesn't have to appraise. So that's a little bit about what we were talking about earlier with, how we get this sort of continued escalation.
Right. Well, not only that, think about it. So that thing's going to close, right? So obviously it's going to most likely close for the contract price. So that becomes a comparable, though it's not technically a good comparable. But who says that the appraiser who's doing the next deal is doing their due diligence to verify what the extenuating circumstances were with that sale?
Yeah.
And, the reason I ask about the appraisals, because we're starting to see that on the listing side and on the buying side that people are saying, oh, I read somewhere that I should remove my appraisal contingency, and an agent saying, well, we're just going to remove the appraisal contingency. And I go, well, that's crazy unless your buyer's got a ton of cash. And guess what? Buyers have cash.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people coming from other areas that are moving to our area, California, for example.
New York.
And they have cash. And they are the ones that are overpaying on some of these things. Yeah. But just similar scenario where I had a buyer, we were looking in the Navarre area, and we made, he was a VA buyer, and he was going to pay his own closing costs. Okay. And the house was listed for, low 300s, and we thought that our offer was pretty good. $20,000 over asking, an as-is purchase, very limited inspection period, no closing cost to the seller. There was 29 offers on that property, and we got beat out. So we go to the next property. 29 offers. So we go to the next offer, kind of did almost the same thing, same scenario, over asking, and didn't get that one. Moved to Niceville this time, made an offer, over asking, same thing, but guess what? We got it, and it appraised. So he didn't bring any money to closing other than his own closing costs. So as the listing agent, was the listing agent so far off on their comparables and they listed that price that they undervalued the property? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
the question is, I don't think no. Like, did you know, when you did that, I'm fairly certain that you did your diligence. You looked at the comparables, and it was worth what you listed it for. And then next thing you know, it's selling for $40,000 over asking, just like this guy in Niceville. It sold for almost $20,000 over asking, and you know. I hear other people saying, well, another agent, I could have sold it for $20,000 over what I listed it for. And maybe the agent didn't do a very good job. No, your agent did a great job for you. You know, we look at comparables, we look at the neighborhood, we see what's sold, we do the very best diligence that we can. I mean, the goal is to try to sell it at the most amount of money as possible.
Yeah, I mean, but our obligation is for the best interest.
Absolutely. Always in the best interest of the client.
Yeah, of the client. So,
but when they come in and they actually appraise, you just start scratching your head because, you know, VA is typically the most conservative loan that's out there.
Yeah, definitely here.
Yeah. So, you know, you just, again, I'm starstruck about what's happening.
Yeah, well, what's crazy is I was reading this little blog here, and if I'm smart and I remember, I'll put it in the comment section or the little information section on YouTube, so you can go check it out yourself. But the median home price, and I think they're talking generally about across the United States in general, has reached an all-time high of $375,000.
Wow.
Up a little over 17% compared to just last year.
Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, how many people do you know can afford a $325,000 home?
I don't know, doctors, lawyers,
yeah.
You know, 04s in the military.
Not me. Not me.
Not me. I'm trying to refi my house right now.
Yeah.
So because the rates are so good. And that's the rates are, that's another part of that, you know, that perfect storm. You know, you got lack of inventory and the rates are just amazing.
Yeah.
Of course, that plays with other things, you know, inflation and everything else. But wow, that is a very good read. And like I said, you know, talking about the new builds being, you know, the number one, you know, the king of the hill right now is new builds. And, you know, typically speaking, that is a telltale sign of the impending future. Not to say that today isn't a good time to buy a home, because today is a great time to buy a home because we will continue to appreciate as the market continues. So, you know, it's just interesting where that money is going to go at the end of the day, you know.
So finally, at least for me, I just kind of want to briefly talk a little bit about my generation. I'm a millennial. And it brings it up in this article. So, you know, I'll post it in, or blog or whatever. So I'll post it in there and people my age can read a little bit about it. But right now, millennials are the biggest purchasers right now. But millennials are also, they have a problem of financial stability. They're not exactly the most financial stable group. There's tons of reasons for this. One of those reasons is called the gig job. The gig job.
Oh, and like so what's popular now. And
what's popular and things like that. And as a millennial, I admit I'm a little bit of a floater. I've floated from job to job on times and things like that. So it's going to be interesting, at least from my perspective, to see where this goes and where our economy goes, and whether or not millennials will be able to ever really lock down their opportunity for home buying. And hopefully, you know, things will smooth out and even out in the future. So, you know, it's something for people my age to consider.
Are you hearing from millennials that, you know, and I'd say people your age, you know, no, it's not like I'm old or anything, but that they don't want to buy, that they want to rent, or they just want to kind of hold fast and see what happmes, or what's up?
Yeah, well, most of my friends are millennials, right? Well, they'd like to buy, but they don't trust the market.
Yeah. Well.
And they don't understand it. So a lot of them. Some of them do, some of them don't. But anyways, right. That's a whole other topic. But a lot of them would probably like to buy, but right now, they're just kind of, a good chunk of them are just priced out. There are plenty of millennials out there who own homes or who could buy homes, but there's still a large chunk out there that's just like, I don't know. But most people want to own a home.
Well, owning the home is certainly the very best thing you could ever do. You know, that's the best way to appreciate wealth, and
Yeah.
you know, you want to knock a wall out, you can do that with a rental. That's probably not a good thing, but
Yeah.
you know, and you know, most people can't afford new. I mean, brand new homes. You know, my first car, I paid $500 for it. You know,
Yeah.
so you know, I didn't go and get a brand new car the day I was able to get my driver's license. And as a young person who's just doing the gig thing, trying to find their way and see what they like to do, you know, they probably, there has to be an entry level. But, you know, a lot of things that people need to consider, especially like, that's actually a really good point about the whole gig thing, because as a lender, lenders don't want to see gigs.
No,
they don't. Unless your gig is, I'm a cook at this job and I went to another job and you're a cook the whole way, as long as there's some tenureship in there.
Well, that's really, I think what it is there's the lenders don't have a long history to work with because of the sort of the transient nature of millennials moving from job to job. Now, maybe who knows, maybe they'll just have to learn to accept that or change the way they do things. I don't know. Maybe not.
It's the same challenges that a self-employed person has. You know, you don't want to pay you want to pay the least amount of taxes as possible. So, you know, you made you made $100,000 this year, but you're only claiming $60,000 and you're writing a bunch of stuff off as debt and that sort of thing. Well, guess what? When you try to buy a house, you only made $60,000. So, and then you need 2 or 3 years of tax returns. So, you know, it's one of those things where you really got to think about, you know, in advance what your plan is, so that you can kind of plan that out.
Yeah.
And again, and that's, you know, a lot of, you know, older generation people are self-employed and, you know, they have the same plight. So I think it's a message to the entire mass that, you know, planning is an important part of this process.
Yeah, definitely, especially when you want to purchase a home.
And educate yourself.
Yeah, definitely. It never any advice to, especially to somebody who's starting out and on the journey to buying a home, just start at Google and just read advice. Whoa! What the heck? What the heck just happened? Different shirt, different pants, shorter hair? Is this some sort of glitch in the Matrix? No, unfortunately. It was me. Yeah, my camera only records up to 30 minutes at a time, and I totally forgot about that. So, just before Cosmo and I were about to sign off, the camera stopped recording. Right around the time we were talking about, I don't know, Google research? Something like that. Anyways, I'd like to thank Cosmo for coming on my very first episode of The Renegade Realtor. He is a wealth of knowledge, great at numbers and the technical sort of topics that go along with real estate. As for me, I'm more of a philosophical kind of guy when it comes to real estate. Anyways, we'd like to thank everyone for watching us the other day. If you enjoyed our episode, please leave a like. Think about subscribing and hitting the bell notification button as well. And if you're on Facebook, think about sharing it with a friend. Or if you're on YouTube, you can share it from there too. Anyways, we're starting from scratch, people. Got nothing. No likes, no watch time, no subscribers. So it would really help. It would really help if you would like and subscribe. Anyways, and leave a comment below. Are you a realtor? Or are you a buyer or a seller? Have you never bought a home before or ever thought about it? And you just found this video and you thought the discussion was interesting? Well, leave your thoughts and comments below. I'd like to interact with some of you. Don't have any thoughts? Comment anyways. Name, number, address, social security number. Nah, just kidding. You don't want to do that. We'll see you next time, folks.